Oh, morning. Thank you. Thank you. I don't usually take sugar anyways, but I have it if I need it. So this is amazing. It's nice presentation. Um, I got my Americano and my little carrot cake dusted with cinnamon. It looks really good. I'm excited to try it. And they have a layer of cream cheese in the middle sandwich. So that should be really nice. Welcome to Reading Wrap and Kingston Coffee. I'm Adrienne, and today I have 6 books to talk about. And coffee, we're at Cannonball in Ligani. It's on Barbican Road, so it's in Sovereign North Mall or Plaza. And so I'm super happy to be here eating carrot cake. And listen, I already found. So this is what number 3. I found the best carrot cake so far. Okay. All right. So first of all, it's got a really good ratio of cream cheese to cake. It is cake. There's no cornmeal happening. It's got carrot. It's got spice. It's dusted with cinnamon on the top. And every bite, you're biting a lot of cream cheese, and I love it. So I'm giving this a 5. I'm not asking any questions about it. Okay, there's no doubt in my mind. And then onto the Americano. So an Americano is just espresso with hot water, right? Or cold. And I really like it. It had foam, which means it had a good amount of coffee, espresso in it. And my only challenge with this is I do taste a little bit of the burnt flavor coming through, but I also get the richness of the coffee. Like, you know, when it still has the like emulsified texture, that little oily texture, it's really good. So I'm enjoying it so far. So I'm gonna give the coffee like a 4, and I'm giving this a 5. So the first book is The Shift by Tinx. I gave this book a 2 out of 5. Okay, let me give you the full title of this book, okay? Because it says a lot of things. It says The Shift, a guide to dating, self worth, becoming the main character of your life. And it says change your perspective, not yourself. Okay. Those are a lot of big claims. So apparently, Tinx is somebody who is on TikTok. I do not know who this person is. Honestly, I was not curious enough to look her up after reading this book. I find that it had a lot of empowering messages. So it's for young girls. It's for the people who spend hours on TikTok looking at things. She talks about her life before TikTok, her life after, what she did in the marketing world. She also talks about her personal life, her relationships, times when she had really high moments and times when she had really low moments, including some boyfriend who was really weird and then cheated on her, of course. It's always cheating stories. But how she found herself, she lost herself, she absorbed his whole personality, and then she found herself back. And I think while there are some really good like empowerment tips in there, I think it's kind of the kind of advice that you just learn with time, and the kind of advice that I wouldn't necessarily say you need to avoid some of these things. There was nothing like majorly that could have crashed your life or that happened. I just think it's just things that happen in your youth. And so I just gave it a 2 out of 5. I'm sorry, if you're a Tinks fan and you know who this person is, it's not, no offense. I just didn't think for where I am in my stage of life that it did that much for me. Okay, so the second book this review is Emotional Labor by Rose Hackman. And the full title of this book is Emotional Labor: The Invisible Work Shaping Our Lives and How to Claim Our Power. So, first of all, what is emotional labor? Emotional labor has to do with the work that's kind of behind ensuring that other people are okay. Who bears that brunt? When two people are in a situation, who actually cares to take that step to make sure that everybody is fine, right? That we're living cohesively. And so I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I'll tell you why. First of all, this book does really well with giving references, pop culture references, research, compiling anecdotes, interviews of people. It reminds me of 2 books that I've read like this. So there's one called what was it called? She was by a scientist. It was Come As You Are. And it had to do with women's sexual experience. And then the other book is called Malcolm Gladwell, called Blink, which I talked about last time. And so by comparing to those, one was definitely more science-based research, and Blink was more psychology-based research. I think compared to those are like gold standards of putting together research studies with narratives, with interviews. Come As You Are had a lot of interviews with anonymized people, and that to me was a gold standard. So comparing this book to those, it fell short. However, I think it's a really good book to keep as a reference in your library, in your bookshelf, about what emotional labor is. I think in this world where men don't necessarily have the onus of taking up emotional labor, it explains how important it is. How important it is that after women, which it usually falls on, come home and work, come home and take care of kids, they still have to say to you, oh, how are things going with work, and help things along and read your moods and read, the grandparents and the parents, and manage the expectations for the entire family, including extended family. So I think it's an important piece of literature, but I don't think it was executed in the most impactful way. And this author is someone who is from the UK, but has lived in America for a long time. So she had two perspectives, which I thought really made it interesting. Her perspective from the English culture, and then also from American culture. So I would recommend it for nonfiction. This is the only nonfiction in this review this month, but it wasn't my favorite in the way that the evidence was compiled. All right, so the next book is Midnight by Beverly Jenkins. Now, if you don't know who Beverly Jenkins is, classic. I think I mentioned her last in my first video, which was the top 10 review with honorable mentions. So Beverly Jenkins is a historical romance writer, she of African American romance specifically. So she has a lot of history dating back from, I'd say, the 50s and 60s, back all the way a decade, not a decade, a century before that. And this one is taking place in the time of the Boston Tea Party and the Red Coats and all of that. And it's actually based in Massachusetts. And it's around this woman who is, she works on the cover, just like how Harriet Tubman and then would work in the cover of Night and basically take on the work of civil rights. So this woman was basically a spy. Her dad was owned a tavern, and so a lot of the generals would come and meet in her dad's tavern, and she would hear things, and then she'd pass them on to the black civil rights fighters and so on for them to do their work. And so she went by the name Midnight, hence the title of the book. And then here comes this man who like moves into the town, and he is also working in that area, so he's well known, but nobody knows who she is. So they come to know each other, but he doesn't know who she is. And in the end, she tells him so that, because she's kind of at risk of being found out. And so it's a romance, but to be honest, for this book, I actually found the historical piece more interesting. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I think that it taught me a lot about Black people's role in that time. When you think about the red coats and the English in Boston, at that time, you don't really think about Black people's role in that. Black people were a part of war. Black people, where they were allowed to fight for their country, but we don't think about how they advanced the agenda of war in America, whether it was positively or opposing that. So this was a good historical lesson for me. And okay, romance. I would say if you want a romance by Beverly Jenkins, Indigo is elite. And let me give you a reference for Indigo. So the main character, the main male character, if you've ever watched, what's that movie? There's this show with the vampires, but he's got like really light eyes, and they're like multiple vampires. There's like a white one and a brown one, and he looks Creole, but I am totally blanking. Not Twilight. Their eyes are light. No, I think it might be the originals. There's a black character, right? And I don't know. But anyways, maybe. But that's who he looks like. And then the girl, she's enslaved, or she was enslaved and she escaped. And he calls her Indigo because her fingers got, when she was in slavery, she worked in the indigo plant, which is a dye, and it stains their fingers. That's what they're able to tell if they were either enslaved previously or currently are enslaved. And it was just chef's kiss. Okay, so if you want a Beverly Jenkins, check that one out, and also teaches you about history and African American history at that time if you were so curious. Fiction. So this one is called The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict. So I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. So this book is about somebody who was actually real. Oh, okay. Another historical fiction, The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict. So this I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is a historical fiction book, meaning it happened based on a particular period of time, and it was in the time of segregation still, or when they were just coming out of segregation. And so this book is about this woman. It's actually based on a real life person. Her name was Belle Marie Greener, and then she just went by Belle Marie Green. And this woman, in terms of appearance, she was black, but in terms of appearance, could pass what they call pass for white, which means that somebody would work and live in society as if they're a black person, as if they're a white person, sorry, at a time when black people were not allowed to have certain social privileges. And so she was a librarian. She studied and worked as a librarian, and she got an opportunity to become the personal librarian and curator for JP Morgan, as in, yes, the bank of JP Morgan Chase. And they had a very complicated relationship where I don't know, they told this line throughout of whether or not they would like get together or not, and they didn't. So they pretty much had a professional relationship. Sometimes it kind of was like father-daughter, but she became indispensable to them to the point where at the time of her death, she was bequeathed like property. She was given, every year she had like a raise in salary. She was given 50,000 US dollars, which at that time was a fortune. Like her family literally rejoiced because they didn't have to work ever again. Um, and to this day, there's a library that is named for her. So she was an important part of that banker's history. And so I think the key things about this book, there's some people who think it's a 5 out of 5. It was not a 5 out of 5 for me, just because as much as it's a fascinating story, I don't think that it changed my perspective about myself. I don't think it changed my perspective about life, how it can be, or the importance of books. I love books. I don't have to be told how important they are, how valuable they are, right? As she was going around searching for rare manuscripts for JP Morgan, and taking business meetings all across Europe. It was exciting, but I think there's also tragedy mixed in, right? So she fell in love with somebody who was married, and like, it was like a known thing, and it was, there was heartbreak, and there was an abortion, and challenging gray areas. She became the family's like provider, and her dad left because the mother decided to make the kids live as white, and he was fighting against that. He was like one of the first black professors at Harvard. So there was just a lot covered in this. And I think for anybody the girl that recommended this online, she's in an interracial relationship. And I think the perspective of someone who faces that, it's going to be a lot more interesting for them, where maybe their offspring or they themselves might pass, as people don't know how to categorize them in a world that loves to bin people, black, white, mixed, whatever it is, how you appear. And so I see the allure of this book, but it wasn't that fascinating for me. But I still think it's an important piece of historical fiction. So, The Wild Robots. This book was a 5 out of 5. It is juvenile fiction, but it is brilliant. So, this book is about this robot, right? Some company makes these robots, and they're on a ship and they get shipwrecked. And so, when they end up, this, like, they're boxes of robots, they end up on this island, and some animals interact with the box and with the pieces and actually turn the machine on, turn the robot on. So this robot wakes up and she speaks robot. But there are all these animals around her, and she's learning how to communicate with them. So she incidentally knows how to speak with all the animals around her. She's literally in the wild. And so she learns how to take care of herself. She is able to, um, right? She learns how to be right. She's booted up for the first time, and then she has all these animal friends. She learns how to help them, how to build houses for them, how to help them with their needs. The beavers, she learns what they need, and they make exchanges, trades, if you will. And then she ends up having a son, who is a little duckling, and she cares for him. I think the duck's mother dies or something, and he imprints on the robot and follows her around, and so she has a son. And I was not expecting to enjoy this children's book so much. I think it's the kind of book I have to have on my physical library. It's the kind of book, and it's a funny thing because it's a book that it's an adventure book, so it's a kind of that children can um, enjoy, but at the same time, it's not even like there are life lessons in it. It's about adaptability. It's about what happens when you're rigid. It's about, capitalism and them coming back to try to get her. And it's about friendship. She won over all the animals, and so they helped her to fight off the bad robots that came to get her. And it sets itself up for a second book. But I really think this is so good, and it's quick, so you could read it multiple times. It would make a great bedtime story. I'm so in love when I think about it more. I just feel like some authors are able to tap into humanity without using literal humanity. And I think that's perfect, right? So you use an example of a robot and animals. It's technology meeting nature, and it is incredible. And I cannot say enough about this book. It is now apparently, I think, a Netflix show. It's been developed into a series. So I've never watched that, and I haven't read the second or third books because there are three, but I will. And I'm just happy that I actually, went to see what the fuss was about and actually got the book and read it. So I highly recommend. And the last book this time is The Book of Night Women. Oh my God. Let's sit in silence because it's beautiful. It's traumatic, but it's beautiful. And I have come to accept that a lot of the books that will really change your life are going to make you feel every single emotion there is to feel. You're going to feel sadness, you're going to feel grief, you're going to feel anger, you're going to feel overwhelmed, you're going to also feel joy and passion and strength and resilience from one book. You're gonna see the beauty in the art and the beauty in the storytelling and the beauty in the imagery and the beauty in the time period. This book was in the period of slavery. First of all, let me stop. It's by Marlon James, who is a Jamaican. He's in the US now. He's written many notable works, and he recently released a show on HBO called Get Millie Black, which did really well, or is doing really well. If you have not watched that, you should watch it. I have not watched it yet because my head is in books, but when I do have time, I will sit to watch that. Marlon James writes, okay? And he writes from a place where he understands that the book, you have to hate the character. You have to hate people. You have to see people go through some things. This book is not easy to digest. I spent most of this book I listened to this one. I spent most of it kind of my shoulders were like this. And by the end I was like, okay, it was not easy, but it was just riveting throughout and throughout and throughout. And I want to give it up to the narrator. Her Jamaican accent was not good, but she did a range of accents because there were slave masters in there. There were enslaved people in there from different cultures, right? Different tribes in Africa, in West Africa. There were, what else? There were English people in there. There were people who were descended from French in there, right? The white people. And it was just so well done. I want to say it makes you question if you are a bad person, because there's one case where one of the enslaved people kind of got with one of the overseers, and he actually liked her, and it made you question, am I wrong, or do I just love? regardless, right? But you know what they were doing to people. He described in detail how they were burning people alive and doing all horrible things to them, right? And then you see a love story in the midst of this, and it makes you think about your whole existence. Like, is something wrong with me? And for this reason, I would tell everybody to read this, especially if you're Jamaican, especially if you've had any interactions with the legacies of slavery. It's gonna make you mad. It's gonna make you want to fight somebody. But the best books do that. I don't have anything else to say. I think if there's one book you should read, it's the Book of Night Women out of these 6. All right, so Cannonball, Ligani, Barbican, whatever you want to call it in Sovereign North, it is, I give it overall a 3.5 out of 5. So, first of all, parking is a challenge depending on the type of day. There are more shops and more people interested in coming here than there are parking spaces. So that is always going to be a challenge. Parking, I would give a 3 out of 5. In terms of workability of this location, I would say I give it a 4.5 for workability. Usually if you get here early enough, you can get a nice spot against the wall and it's quiet. There's Wi-Fi. You do have to, the Wi-Fi isn't open. You have to buy something and then you get a little piece of paper for the Wi-Fi. So don't just expect to come here and buy one thing and then work all day. It's like a 2-hour Wi-Fi. So that's just a note. In terms of the food, the carrot cake is the best I've had so far recently in Kingston. I give it a 5. I am a carrot cake girl. The cream cheese to cake ratio is on point. The Americano that I got is really good. It's a little bit burnt, but the flavor of the coffee is rich and it is not too much water to espresso. In terms of accessibility, so I do not see any ramps around. Okay, I stand corrected. There is a ramp. So if there is a ramp, you get a 5. There is no, to get to this shop, it's on the floor level. So you don't have to worry about going upstairs. I'm not sure if there's an elevator for upstairs, but in terms of getting here, there is a ramp. So I stand corrected. And then the very last thing is just environment. I really like this coffee shop just because I can come here and order my stuff and know that I can, yes, you have to order multiple things, but I could really sit here all day. It's a little bit more quiet. If it's not too hot, you can sit inside. The AC is nice. I would give it a 4 for environment. So overall, good location to come grab something, grab a coffee, have a little meeting, and then maybe do a little work. It's so good. Cream cheese. Cream cheese is amazing. So anything you want to say? Have you read any interesting books recently? Or I know you want to.
You say
Tell me what you like. What's your genre of preference?
I really like fantasy books and
I have a rec. Well, finish. Go ahead.
I'm really into just anything that helps me solve something.
Okay.
Any type of storyline that's interwoven and complex. And I'm really just like an adventure girly.
Okay.
Like when I was a little bit.
Yes, and I've known her since then.
Yeah.
Chronicles of Narnia and all that.
Okay.
So that's my kind of vibe.
I have a rec. Hold on. Let me get you. I haven't read it yet because I just myself got it, but I am sold when she told me. So I think it's called So Let Them Burn. Let me double check. It's fantasy. Yeah?
That might be in my
TBR. So wait, let me just confirm that's what it's called. So it is Together We Burn, it's called, by Isabel Ibanez. This is what it looks like. Together We Burn. Yeah. So that's really good. But also there's one called Never Let Me Go, which is kind of dystopian. It makes you think. At the end, you're like, what just happened? So that's a really good one. And I think it might have won a Nobel. If it might have won. And the other Nobel I recommend is The Vegetarian. Yeah, it's translated from Korean. And it is just a total mind, like, I don't know what's happening,
So
but
what
I
got
like
you
it.
into reading?
Grad school,
Grad school?
I was in my PhD program and I was going crazy. And so that's how I would decompress.
I hear you're studying
Biomedical.
university lecturer.
Yes, so am I. That's my day job. What topic?
So we connect.
Yeah.
I'm in education.
Oh, okay.
And, with children, advocacy now.
That's amazing. Very important work.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
it's very important.
Interesting.
Especially in the US. I mean, in Jamaica, of course, like it's important. But we're just research strapped, which governs a lot of how we think.
Yes.
But in the US, where they actually have all the resources and they're choosing to defund, that's insane.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, it really is
Insane.
Every news article I see,
Yeah.
it's just a downhill spiral. And sometimes it always gets lower. It's crazy.
Actually crazy. So yeah, it's interesting because I had I was in the US. I had my children there, and I was like,
A child is.
thank you. I will take the compliment. I appreciate it. But it was important for me to raise them here because we have our problems, but I just feel like we just see the importance of education.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so no, my PhD is in biomedical engineering.
Oh,
Yeah.
biomedical engineering?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you? Did you go to school here or abroad?
I'm just like in like a lifelong process.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you remember the book recommendation.
I have it in my notes.
Okay.
But her sister is in the medical field. She's
Yeah.
doing a doctor of pharmacy.
Oh, Nito.
Yes.
Nito.
Yes.
Does she like to read or not really?
She doesn't have time.
Yeah.
I get that. I listen to most of my books. I don't have time to sit, but I have kids, so I can have chores and errands, and
Yes.
so I listen.
Alive.
I live.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, same.